going to begin our Planning Commission meeting for October 7th. Would you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we're going to go through a roll call, and normally, obviously, we'll just say our names, but since we have two new members joining us today, Christian and Summer, perhaps we can all just take a moment to introduce ourselves and then hear from Summer and Christian. But Pamela?
Pam Gilmartin. I used to be on the planning board, and now I'm on sport. And I've lived in Southampton 50 years. So.
Eduardo.
Eduardo Simeone, been on the board too long. And I don't know, that's it, live in Southampton.
Mr. Essie?
Yes, I was on the Architectural Review Board, the Town Landmarks Board, and now the Village Planning Commission.
Mr. Anderson? Or
Michael Anderson, welcome you two members. I'm on the Planning Commission since the beginning of the year, so I'm a pretty new member also. And I'm a village resident for about 20 years.
And Laura, do you want to introduce yourself? She's on Zoom.
Okay.
Sorry, Kat. Thank you.
Okay, Laura.
Dishes.
Can you unmute and introduce yourself, dear?
Okay, all right, I just did. You hear me?
We hear you loud and clear.
Okay. You all, I have trouble hearing you all. I don't know. I don't have those fancy headphones.
Okay, so can you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Laura Davini, a member of the Planning Commission.
Mike Lieberman, co-chair. Mark Schiffer isn't here today. He co-chairs as well. Christian, would you mind introducing yourself and maybe telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Christian Pl Co, and I have been a village resident for nearly 30 years now. I have served on the Board of Ethics since 2017. We have completely redone Chapter 7 of the Code of Ethics. We have done a lot of work on financial disclosure statements, revamping them. We have done training throughout the village, which our board was responsible for. And as such, I've acquired a reasonable knowledge of municipal governance, as well as good knowledge and understanding of course, land use boards. And I'm delighted to be working with you now on the Planning Commission, and certainly want to thank the mayor for appointing me and giving me this new challenge after a few years on the Board of Ethics to give me something more strategic than the tactical stuff I was doing.
Well, we're glad to have you. We're going to rely on you, hopefully not for ethics, for other reasons. Summer, how about you?
I'm Summer Stelling. I am a senior in high school. I was just appointed in my junior year. There was like an application, and I started filling it out, and now I'm appointed. I'm really excited to be on this board and get to hear what everyone has to say. I've lived in Southampton my whole life, and yeah.
Welcome. We're thrilled to have you. It's wonderful that we can kind of perhaps have a revolving door between us and the high school, and you're going to be that person, it sounds like. And thank you, Mayor Warren, for coming to this conclusion. This is a great idea. So now I think it's time for us to review the minutes and adopt them. And sadly, I don't have a copy of them in front of me. Is this where we make a motion to adopt them, or Kat, do you mind? Yeah, make a motion to adopt. Does anyone want to make that?
Second.
Second, thank you.
You have to tell them which ones, what date they are.
Oh, that was for, when did we last meet? August, or excuse me, September
10th.
Yeah.
September 10th.
September 10th.
September 10th, I believe.
Okay, great. I apologize. September, August, it's all merged into one wonderful time that is now in the past. as we head towards winter. So make a motion to adopt the September 10th minutes.
Second?
Okay. So now they are adopted, or what
All
is?
in favor?
All in favor, thank you. I'm glad we have ethics here. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So we have our special guest. Is Peter Campbell also presenting today?
Yeah, I think that's what I heard, and he's on here.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring him in now?
Bill, is that okay with you? I know you want to give an update. Sure. Okay, let's bring in Peter. Peter, can you hear us?
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me put my video on so you can see me. Hi. Just to be clear, I was really struggling to hear audio from anybody else. I was hearing audio from Kat Styler, but it seemed like all the other audio was coming through her microphone and everybody else was very muted, so I barely could make out what was being said.
Understood. The public can hear.
Okay, great.
It's just the Zoom people. It's a little difficult.
Okay. Good afternoon. I've been asked to present this afternoon in relation to the proposed dredging of Old Town Pond. I'm sure everyone is well aware of the issues of the water bodies of Southampton Village, so I won't go into some of the problems that plague the water bodies, but more how I see using our technology we can potentially solve some of these issues. We've been looking with some of the neighbors of Old Town Pond and the Clean Water Committee or I guess the Environmental Committee now of Southampton Village at a few remediation options. And the one that particularly interests me is the dredging, a dredging project where we would remove a layer of sediment from the bottom of the pond. And typically the issues surrounding this are you would have a significant dewatering component of the dredging project, and that requires large amounts of space, and it can be fairly disruptive to the neighbors and the residents of the village, along with trucks coming in and out and significant disruption, although this typically would happen in the winter months when the village is quieter. Our technology is used in a variety of different applications in agriculture and tunnel boring and all kinds of things. But really what we do is we are able to dewater the material on site continuously, and therefore it can be kind of removed the same day and does not rely on the existing technologies such as biobags, which would take months and months to dewater on the side of the pond. And then have to be excavated and then transported. We would do a more kind of a slow and steady approach that does not disrupt the neighbors in the same way. So a smaller capacity dredging program. So instead of trying to get the dredging done in 3 or 4 weeks, we would do the dredging over a number of months. But it would be a smaller footprint, smaller power requirement, less noise, and generally less disruption, with the waste being removed from the site the same day and not kind of sitting around in heaps smelling out the neighbors. So we've been working in conjunction with RU engineers, and they are looking at putting together the dredging program, and we are looking to provide that dewatering component that would run alongside it. Typically, I would say the challenges of dredging and dewatering have made most of these projects no longer economically feasible. And we think that we have a method here that would be significantly under the cost of traditional style dredging operations. And we really think we could do it quite quickly and quietly and with less cost to the village.
Glad to hear that. You can hear us a little bit, or?
I can hear maybe you at about a 5% volume.
So if anyone has any questions, I guess be sure to speak up.
Peter, Michael Anderson, can you explain the process of, a lot of people might know what dewatering is, how you actually go about doing the dredging?
Could I ask Kat to please repeat the question so I can hear it clearly?
Okay. What was the question?
Go ahead, Michael.
It was regarding dredging.
Yeah. So Michael had asked.
They want to know.
If Peter could explain the dewatering process.
If you can explain the dewatering process, please.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's you know, I'm always discussing this with people with various backgrounds and technical expertise, so I really have to get a feel for how much level of information you want during the session. At its core, what our technology does is it takes a slurry, which by definition is kind of part solid and part liquid, and we would take that slurry onshore and run it through our machine where it is effectively separating the solid component from the liquid component. That liquid component is a clean-ish, I say ish because it still has particles in it, and it's not drinking water, but it's clean enough to go straight back into the pond. So the water goes back into the pond, and that dry, and I also say dry loosely because it's just a function of moisture content, that dry filter cake, which is the dry solid, is in a conveyable form and can then be conveyed into a skip or a container on the back of a truck, and then be, as I say, transported off-site same day. Typically, when you're dewatering dredged material, they use these big bio bags, which are huge canvas bags, 50 feet long, 20 feet wide, 10 feet high, and they fill the bag with slurry. And it sits there for 2 or 3 months, maybe longer, leaching that water back into the ground and running back into the pond. And once that material is then dry, the bag is basically cut open and excavated, and that material is then carted off of trucks in kind of one big go. What we're proposing is that kind of more slow and steady, continuous method where you would have a truckload a day leaving the site versus the other method where you would leave it all and have maybe 20 trucks a day for a few days. So it's really a press. It's using a physical press to separate the water from the solid. And so it is actually a very basic concept. And our machine is self-contained. All of the lines are piped. There's nothing that is open apart from that filter cake that is conveyed into the waste container. And our machine is kind of self-cleaning. It runs continuously using a very rudimentary software, and it uses very high power, and it runs off a single drive. So it's low power and low noise. And really all it's doing is just separating that solid from the liquid. If you weren't to adequately separate the solids from the liquid, the cost of transporting that material would make the project not feasible, because you would be transporting 100% of the volume. And we're saying we can do better than pretty much anybody out there in terms of getting that moisture content down, which is a direct correlation to transport costs, which is a huge cost driver for a project like this.
I have a question. What is the ecological impact and what happens to the wildlife that?
They want to know what the ecological impact is and what would happen to the wildlife.
I would say there's little to no ecological impact. I mean, you would have to, I think Rue is very well placed to talk about that in terms of the dredging portion. Our technology is not going to have any ecological impact. We're removing, high nitrogen and phosphorus silt from the base of the pond. It's going to have a huge positive ecological impact, I would say. And if we have to use any kind of binding agent to really improve the results of the technology, that binding agent is, we have options that include vegetable starches, like a potato starch, that coagulates the solid material and stays with the solid material. It does not pass through the filter membrane into the water. So nothing, there is no component going back into the lake that has any negative ecological impact.
How does the dredging occur?
How does the dredging occur, sir?
The dredging is this is my best guess, and Charlie McGuckin from Rue is the person who's really putting together the dredging program from a technical standpoint. But I would imagine that how the dredging would look would be a simple barge with a hydraulic dredge. Think of just a large vacuum cleaner that is, a small barge being, less than 10 feet by less than 10 feet, and it's mobile. It's moving around the pond and picking up the silt from the base. We may have there may be some kind of an agitator. Think of something like a big hand blender that's agitating the base, and then the sucker is pulling up that material through a pipe that comes on shore. We then dewater it on site, convey the solid material away, and the clean water goes back in the pond. I think it's quite straightforward.
It sounds like the drain cleaners they use out on the roads to clean the drains.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different. Really, we're sucking, we would be sucking up sediment from the base of the pond and trying to get it as dry as possible, as I said, to reduce that transport cost. And that's really the core of it. There's not much else to it, to be honest.
How deep does you have to go?
They want to know how deep you need to go?
Charlie is better placed to answer that because he has in fact done the sediment analysis recently. There are parts of the pond that are 2 feet deep of sediment, and there are some that are 4 and closer to 6 feet. But I would say I think the average is somewhere between 3 and 4 feet.
Average of what?
The average is between 3 and 4 feet.
I believe so. Please don't quote me on that because I didn't write the report on it. Charlie has.
Kat, if you wouldn't mind asking about the timeline, is this something that could be happening this winter, or?
Do you have a timeline, and is it possible that it could happen this winter?
Well, I know that the environmental committee and the neighbors have been rallying, and they are rearing to go on this. I don't believe that. I believe it certainly could be done this winter if all the kind of ducks were in a row and the kind of the state PEC played ball and everybody kind of got behind the project. I would like to see it happen. I would like this to be a kind of a smaller kind of pilot program for bigger projects in the area, which are so desperately needed. So I've been banging this drum for a few years, and I really I believe that Old Town Pond is a really good site because we have village land to the north, which is a perfect staging area for this, and we have good access to the site to Highway 27 to the north. So I think it's a really solid project that is not going to break the bank, and it's also not going to take years and years to complete. I think we could do a significant amount of damage in one winter, and I think we should aim for that.
Is that significant amount of damage quantifiable? Do we know what kind of impact it will have?
Is that significant damage quantifiable? Do you have a number?
This is also something that should go to Charlie McGuckin for further questions. He really is, because they will be doing the engineering work. They will be physically completing the work. He has a better idea of how long it would take to commission the project and how long the approvals will take, and then how long he will need to run his machine, the dredging operation for. We would just kind of tag in behind them. So I can't give you solid answers on that without hearing from Charlie first.
Okay.
Are we talking about Old Town Pond or Agawam Pond or both?
We are specifically talking about Old Town Pond in this case, but it is my goal and my objective to be a part of the cleanup of Agawam in the future, and so is Rue Engineering. So we want to prove to the village and its residents that dredging is not this big, scary endeavor. And we think that Old Town is the perfect body of water to start that process.
So I just have 2 follow-up questions.
A couple of follow-up questions.
So perhaps you can, one, speak about the DEC. I assume there's DEC approval process.
Can you speak about the DEC approval process? That's number one.
Sure.
And number 2.
This is an appropriate time, but I guess the cost of these kinds of projects.
And what would the cost of these projects be?
I'm sorry if I keep repeating myself here. I was under the impression that Charlie McGuckin was going to be here presenting from Rue. If he's not, that's okay. He really is the driving force in terms of the scope of this project and what that would entail. They specialize in projects such as this. They have contacts, long-standing contacts with the DEC. They are able to figure out, the approval process pretty well. I just don't have a good idea of how long that will take or what it entails. I know that there are some approvals. I honestly don't know what exactly that entails.
Okay.
I have a question. On the solids, once you do water on the solids itself, the solids have to be trucked off of Long Island, or can they be reused?
Regarding solids, do they need to be trucked off of Long Island or can they be reused?
That's so that is that's one of the more kind of contentious issues surrounding dredging, is really what to do with the waste. In the case of Lake Agawam, it's very complicated because there are some scary things in the sediment there that would not get approval to just dispose, locally. The good news for Old Town Pond, and this was the result that came out of Rue Engineering's sediment analysis, was there is actually really nothing that is, classic pollution, right? There's no high levels of arsenic or mercury or lead or anything like that. What we have is high levels of phosphorus and nitrogen, which is creating algal blooms. That, in theory, does not create a huge problem, and there may be some good options for us to dispose of the waste. If you think about it, we're talking about an organic matter that has high nutrient levels from fertilizer. We're definitely going to explore options such as trying to convert that waste into fertilizer to be reused. It's not unrealistic to think that's possible, but some work still needs to be done on, analyzing that material to see if it is possible. I would say in the worst case, yes, it may have to be trucked off island, but we are going to endeavor to dewater that material to its driest possible form, so that we are not carting water off island unnecessarily.
I have another question. I watched them do a cleanup in Sag Harbor where they had contaminated, and they were using a high temperature furnace to put the material through. And after they ran it through the furnace, they were able to, use it any place. Could that be possibly done at Old Town?
Okay, so he said there's a place in Sag Harbor that did this with a high temperature furnace.
Right.
Could you possibly be doing that at Old Town?
I mean, if you think about that in its most basic form, what they are doing is using a very, very high energy intensive process to remove the water. And that is certainly possible, and it is probably very effective, but it is also very, very energy inefficient. You're really you're taking, it's just typical conversion of energy from one form to another. You're really taking that electricity used to power the furnace and transferring that cost onto dewatering. And I don't think you would have a net cost saving by doing that. I think it would probably be cheaper just to transport the water at that cost. Our machine is, as I said, it's running on very, very low power consumption.
Well, does anyone have any questions? Which maybe we should thank Peter and for attending.
Thank you, Peter. They don't have any more questions at this time, and you're welcome to stay and listen.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to mute you, but I'm going to leave you in. Oh, you muted. Good job.
Quite interesting. Bill, we don't want to keep you, so if you want to perhaps
yeah, really quick.
Sure.
It's good. Welcome. Bill Mager, and I come to you as the chair of the steering committee for the master plan update. And just to give you a brief update on where we are, Buckhurst Vizjakmar, who was retained back in 1999-2000 to do the first master plan, has been retained again to do the update. And this time, Mr. Fish of Buckhurst Vizjakmar is really taking the lead. Noah Levine is also taking a major role in the update as well. And they're doing a lot of the preliminary work that must be done before, they get to anything concrete. A lot of it has to do with the demographics of the community and how that's changed over 20 years. As you saw, the census has shown that there are many more people living in the village in 2020 than there were in 2010, so that's even only 10 years ago. So they're looking at all that data and putting that together, but in the meantime, we've also developed a survey that is going to go out to everybody, and it will be available online, and we're thinking of different ways to get that message out about the survey so that everyone can participate and take the survey who would like to. And it's not only limited to village residents. People who live in the town outside of the village borders are also allowed to take the survey, but they have to denote that, that they live in the town as opposed to just the village. But I think it's going to be very helpful. This was done back in 2000, and so it's just updating, the views and the thoughts that people living in the village today have on how they would like to see the village improve going forward, and asking for different issues to be ranked and things like that. Traffic, the usual issues that we all know about. The other thing that I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of is the first public hearing for the master plan update will be held on the 27th of this month. That is going to be done, though, by Zoom. And Buckhurst Yakmar has said that they've had a very good turnout. In fact, they think a better turnout when they are able to do it by Zoom, because people don't have to physically come to a location. 20 years ago or 21 years ago, we did it in the cultural center, and we had breakout tables. They're going to be able to do the same thing, but virtually with Zoom, and then also have breakout groups that they're going to be able to do online. So very excited to see that, but obviously we want to get the word out as broadly as possible to all those that do want to participate, and there will be, again, more information on the village website, and they're looking at other ways to get the word out. Obviously they're going to run things in the Southampton Press, but certainly all of you, and speaking here, hopefully people at home will take note that, again, it will be from 6 to 8 in the evening on Wednesday, October 27th. And people will be able to participate live but virtually in the planning session, if you will, work session, if you will, of the master plan update. And Buckhurst Yakmar will lead that as the consultant retained by the village to put this all together. So that's the update at this point, but obviously there's a lot coming out this month. Wanted you all to be aware, and again, get the word out as broadly as possible so that as many people participate as we can do it. They have a system that actually can handle hundreds of people on Zoom, which is kind of amazing. And they said, again, in other communities where they've done this, it's been very successful, and so they're looking forward to doing it here in Southampton. But really, that was all that I had to bring up tonight, but just to keep everyone aware of where we are in the process. It's still very early, but these are the steps that are really going to give the planners feedback from village residents about issues that they want to make sure are addressed, concerns they have. In fact, on the survey, you can even identify specific intersections where you say that there might be issues. There are questions about bike lanes. It's very, very far-reaching. But again, if you want to participate in person virtually, that's between 6 and 8 p.m. on Wednesday, October 27th. That's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Summer, you're going to have to reach out to the high school and make sure they're engaged. Does anyone have any questions for Bill before we let him escape?
Yeah, I do. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for the work you're doing on that group, along with Eldon and the others.
Yeah, Eldon's been a great help. He obviously served with you guys all for a very long time, so he brings a lot of institutional knowledge as well.
This public hearing on the 27th, you said you had a lot of participants already.
Well, no, not already. There were a lot of participants 21 years ago.
Okay.
When they did the first master plan, but they are expecting maybe an even larger turnout now because it can be by Zoom.
Right.
So you don't physically have to come to the cultural center to log on and participate.
Right.
You can do it from wherever.
So my question, Bill, how are we going to reach out to village residents to be aware of this? I'm pretty tuned on with what's going on around here, and I'm hearing of it.
Well,
I'm glad
honestly,
to
this
be
is
here
breaking
today.
news. You're hearing it first.
Okay.
So, actually, the village is also going to be working with a marketing group
Okay.
to make sure that, village residents are aware that this is coming up. And so, again, I know they were working on that this afternoon.
Yeah, it's only 20 days away.
Yeah, no, they were, but the thing is, that they also said you don't want to tell people too far in advance, because then it sort of escapes them. So you said this is really the critical time when they have to start getting the word out, so that people put it on their calendar and look to participate. So I think we're on track, but we're going to try and get something out. Tomorrow's Friday, but by this weekend, it's a holiday weekend, but certainly, by early next week, they're going to try and get a lot of information out, and it'll certainly be on the village website. It's going to be noticed in the Southampton Press.
It is, okay.
Yeah, and so, they're trying to use lots of different ways to reach out. I'm sure they're going to also reach out to some stakeholders specifically to get their participation. So that's really, but you're exactly right. Now is a critical time, so they're looking to do that over the next week.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, I do have one quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you're going to denote between town residents and village residents in the survey.
Right.
Are we going to be attributing like a weighted scale of some sort to?
Honestly, that would be a great question for the consultants.
Okay.
When you obviously have a survey that people can take just going online, they could be from anywhere, right?
Right.
So they want people to denote where they live, and then they will look at those answers and say, well, for village residents, these are the most important issues. For non-village residents, these are the most important issues. And obviously, then that's taken into consideration. Certainly, village residents should have a little bit of a louder voice, since they're the ones that live and pay the taxes here. But they want to make sure that they're taking in the entire community and getting as many voices heard.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions before we let them run off?
Bill, I know you're talking about traffic, and one of the things that...
Well, that's one issue that keeps coming up over and
Oh,
over
let me tell you,
again.
I think that, I mentioned to the mayor at the time, also mentioned to
You're
the
never
board,
leaving
that we
now.
should have left-hand turning arrows on every single light in the village, and then get after the county and get after the state. The other thing they should do is synchronize the lights on County Road 39.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I used to go with my father or my brother into Long Island City, and Horace Harding Boulevard, they would, if you made 30 miles an hour and the light turned green, you'd go all the way into Long Island City without hitting a light. So they should synchronize those lights, that would improve the traffic.
Well, that sounds, we're going to have to talk to the county executive about that as well.
Well, you also have to talk to the
Yeah,
state,
and the
because the state gets
yeah.
involved in
Yeah.
this.
Those are good points, and honestly, Bob, you should make sure that you identify these as issues that you think should be addressed, because that's the way we can categorize them, and then go out. Once we have everything that we want to talk to the state about, we can go to them and say, these are the issues that we want to talk to you about, or to the town, or to the county, or to whomever, we need to address. But they want to categorize all these things so that, again, instead of having like one-off discussions, we have a whole list that we can compile and then have them address.
Yeah, I spoke to the chief of police, and she said they've been trying to get the county to cooperate with them, and they're just going around in circles.
Yeah. No, listen, another thing I think we need to do work on is so the walk and don't walk signs correspond to the lights on Main Street and Denver Road.
Yeah.
I
That
just
doesn't
wish,
seem to make much sense to me, but anyway.
I-
Now I'm going to get in trouble for saying that.
I
I've
wish
always
they
wondered
would pay
about that.
attention to those lights, not walk out in front of you when it's a green light.
Yeah. So that's an issue that obviously needs to be addressed. But hopefully we'll get comments from a broad section of the village population, and then, again, it's hope that once this is put into a master plan update, the trustees can act upon these. And the process is probably going to take, about 9 months. So we won't have a final report until probably late spring. So this is the first public hearing. There will be another public hearing in the spring once they get a lot further along in the process. This is the first one where it's, with the survey, is supposed to identify major issues that residents want addressed.
Thank you, Bill.
All right.
Really appreciate your time.
Okay. All right, sure. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, we're next on our agenda is going over some of these new developments and discussions and task assignments regarding cannabis local law, special exception rulings, and other suggestions. The cannabis local law, as we're all aware, the village opted out. I'm not sure if we should be hyper-focusing on it because a decision has been made and the ship may have sailed. This might be something you want to revisit in the new year, but you're all welcome to voice your opinion. Laura, I know you have a strong opinion on this. I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Having real difficulty hearing you all. I'm sorry, I'm about to sign off. It's really difficult to hear you all.
Okay, but perhaps, Kat, if you don't mind, just perhaps relaying the message of that we're discussing cannabis. If Laura has anything she'd like to discuss before signing off, because
Sure, they're discussing cannabis and they want to know if you have anything to add to that conversation.
That's funny. Well, I know that the village opted out. I know the Shinnecocks are going to go ahead. They're under really no regulations statewide. So I guess we'll see what falls out as far as dispensary placement. Is Southampton Town opting in?
well,
Not opting out.
yeah, they're not going to opt out. But at this time, of course, it could change.
Well, so then it just becomes a question of spacing of dispensaries.
Right. We just.
I mean, if we had 4 people lobby against a liquor store where Citarella is, I mean, I can imagine what kind of nonsense we're going to hear. So I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
Peter Campbell now. Peter Campbell is here.
I thought we had Peter Campbell earlier.
Oh, okay. Well, he's got his hand up.
Oh, okay. Peter, hit it.
All right, Peter.
Sorry, I had my hand up because the other gentleman who is due to present, Charlie McGuckin, has not been able to get access to the Zoom. He says his email was not authorized and it's not letting him in, and he is ready to present.
Okay. Okay.
We had him.
No,
Michael, I just have one thing to say, and then I'm going to have to sign off because I can't hear the general discussion. But there were some things that we decided in the last meeting in September regarding the revamping of the plan, the village plan, master plan. And I don't know if they were accomplished. I think there was something to do with communication with the panel and also written things that might be translated to the planning commission from minutes of panel meetings. Do you remember this?
I do. Mark.
And I don't think anything has transpired. Am I correct in that?
Mark was taking the initiative on that, and being that he's not here today, we'll have to follow up with him in the next meeting. But I have a feeling this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and as we move forward in this meeting, I would like to recommend that perhaps we begin, and Christian had pointed this out, that we begin recognizing that we need to have tangible goals that we actually deliver on, and then long-term goals that we aspire to, and of course, what's in between.
Mark was going to deliver the list of things to the panel. Did he do that?
I'm not sure, so we'll have to have him speak to that in the follow-up meeting.
Have you attended any panel meetings, or have you been informed about any panel meetings?
I have not.
You have not. Had they met?
Not to my knowledge. Mark and I would have gone together.
So we have our list of priorities. Mark circulated those.
Correct.
And the panel needs to be aware of those. And that was supposed to be given to them.
Which Mark may have given, but I don't know what the follow-up is. So I'll follow up with Mark, and we can circulate an email and perhaps discuss this at maybe our next work session.
if this is an ongoing thing, or is this a stop and start? I mean, if this is an ongoing thing, then we should be involved in this because it's ultimately falls to us in some weird way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Laura, and I appreciate you bringing this up again so that it doesn't fall to the wayside.
Okay, well, I would look forward to hearing what's transpired. So there's been a month. Well, probably not quite a month, but anyway. But I'm going to have to sign off because your discussion is very difficult for me to hear. But it's very nice to hear from Peter about Old Town Pond, and I look forward to more discussion on that.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So I think Laura actually has a really good point, and I will follow up with Mark, and perhaps we can have a work session about this. But I do want to continue forward for sake. Oh, but we do have the presentation, huh? Is he still trying to hop in?
Apparently that fellow could not get in.
Okay. Well, if something changes, just, I guess, let us know, and maybe we can have a quick presentation from him for the sake of time. So I guess perhaps, if no one minds, I'd like to move on a tangent from the agenda and discuss kind of what Laura's pointing out, as well as what Christian has pointed out, that there are some action items that we're all interested in, and we need to make sure that we continue with them and follow up on them. And maybe a way to do this is through, let's call it a champion. Whereas I know Michael has on several occasions brought it up to me, and now Bob also today had mentioned something about infrastructure and how we should be burying these lines. Now, so that this topic doesn't just continually go around in circles in our conversation, is this something that we could assign a member to pursue? And then we're updated on, and we can add feedback to, and we incrementally get this done. Whether that looks like us sitting down with the mayor to see if he's interested, or that looks like us drafting a letter on his behalf to the utilities expressing our interest in this. I just want to bring this to the commission's, in front of you all, and to hear what your thoughts are on this.
I looked into this information, and eventually, must have been 10 years ago I did this, and located the people to contact and stuff. And I also have a relative who had worked for the Long Island Lighting Company. He was an engineer. And I could call my cousin Chris up and ask him, because he was in charge of the power plants.
Well, before we hyper-focus on infrastructure, I'd like to speak more about the process. Whereas a member takes on a leadership role in pursuing an action, in pursuing a task or a passion project, let's call it. So, Michael, on several occasions you've mentioned infrastructure. You come from a National Grid background, and LIPA, this is your wheelhouse. It's not my wheelhouse. Now, am I interested in it? Sure, but I could also see you perhaps leading the charge on this, updating us, and maybe then we facilitate a conversation with the mayor, right, where we gauge the mayor's interest. Because again, we have to remember we're acting on the behalf of the mayor. We are appointed positions where we are here to help lessen the burden for all the things they must do.
Well, Michael, I don't mind being the lead on the infrastructure, because it is something that I am pretty passionate about and I think really needs to get done. First thing, though, I think that I should do is contact the mayor himself and find out if he wants us to move forward with it.
I agree.
And for him to write a letter to LIPA, the board of LIPA, saying that, this is what we would like to get done and try to accomplish, and what are the goals and steps that we have to do. Working for them for 33 years, I know if the mayor does write a letter, it's a lot easier to get stuff done as opposed to me going as a planning commission member. But I think if we take that first step, I'd be happy to do it and follow through with it.
I think that's great. And, I can easily attend with you if you want to sit down with the mayor, or of course on your own, whatever you feel comfortable with. And I think that'd be great. And now, so I guess, Christian, you've been watching us and how we've been engaging. Do you have perhaps some comments on the process, on how we move this forward? And if not, maybe we can go around, think about some of these or perhaps at a later date, or perhaps in a work session, we can think about similar projects. Look at that list that we've given to Mark to go to the mayor and think about, well, who wants to actually take this on and learn more about it, research it, and move the ball forward. But
Sure. I have spent a reasonable amount of time listening to all of your sessions, certainly in the last year, and what struck me most is accountability. And I think having a champion on the project, like the one you're willing to take on, given all your expertise and background, is a wonderful way for the group to progress. You can always think of, gee, I need support from this person or that person on planning commission, and have them work with you on it. You may not want to shoulder everything on your own.
Right. Of course.
But at least the commission would have somebody to turn to when they have thoughts. And you may have some contribution.
I had done it,
on
like
the
I said,
subject.
just 10 years ago, I had
Exactly.
all the names and phone numbers and stuff like that, and I'm trying to think about where did I put that
Yeah.
stuff?
So I think that's great. It's all about accountability of things that the planning commission should work on. Look, before I joined and I arrived today, I read again Chapter 20, which is your village code on the planning commission. And when you look at section 20-3, it has 5 bullet points of things that is basically your mission statement. And I think it's well worth revisiting it because it really drives home what we should be, as a commission, focusing on. The mission statement is there. And one of them, just to move on in terms of my contribution, that I thought I'd like to bring up here, 20-3C is really talking about the Planning Commission recommendation to the Board of Trustee about proposed amendments to the village code and particularly to zoning, right? And a lot of it has been done in the past. And I just want to bring one particularly, and it's less strategic than tactical, but I think there's something that could be looked at here, and I'd love to be the one to champion that particular look, and I want to see if the board is interested in this. There was an issue with the building department issuing 2 separate COs on a property in South Main Street a while ago, while the ZBA was reviewing the application for a subdivision. And I could go into the details there, but what I thought was interesting from my perspective is whether this group would be interested to have someone, perhaps myself or somebody else, review the code and to see if there is a possible amendment to avoid having the building inspector putting themselves in what will be perceived as a arbitrary and capricious decision on what went on, and maybe button down, as other communities reportedly have done, on these kinds of specific issues. And to me, these are interesting recommendations to make to the Board of Trustees so that we don't have the difficulties that we have had on this particular issue between ZBA working on this for a long time, issues with the building inspector, perceptions, etc. If we have a buttoned-up code on these kinds of things, it would take away this unnecessary burden on the building inspector on these specific issues. I don't know all the ins and outs. I'd love to know more to see if there's something we could help by buttoning up the code on and to avoid having people put in this position, whether in a building department or the ZBA. Any thoughts or discussion on that?
Just when I served on the Architecture Review Board, we had a clash with the ZBA where then they told them they had to tear this historic building down or they had to move it. And I had to go before the ZBA and got into an argument with them. So that's one of the things that we had to iron out.
Kat?
We do have a caller now, and I can't tell who it is. I'd like to let them talk.
Sure, go ahead. I'm going to guess it's Mark. We'll revisit this. So let me make a comment then. Why don't we have this list of action items? So I think we're going to hopefully revisit this list in the next meeting to A, discuss what has progressed with regards to connecting with the mayor and this other committee, and B, perhaps see who else is interested in championing some of these items. When it comes to the building department item specifically, I can join you on that if you'd like, especially because I've written similar checks and balances within our code at the town. So I think I'd be able to pull language quite easily. And especially if you're leading the charge tonight, you can kind of focus me, and then I can really add some expertise. Does anyone else have any comments on the matter of the building department with regards to the building inspector making these determinations? And Summer, if you have any questions, I mean, there's a lot here, and we don't want to lose you. And at some point, maybe we should sit down, or you can call one of us, and we can kind of give you some perspective. But we don't want to just talk at you. But this is your first meeting, of course, I imagine. Yeah, you're learning.
Definitely.
I didn't talk for like 3 months. Now I don't stop. Okay. So does anyone else have any more comments for Christian? Eduardo? Okay. Are there any other, sorry, Pamela.
Doesn't the building inspector has like a leeway, and to make decisions, and I think they pretty much make them based on how they made the same decision earlier, but there's no flat answer to a lot of the things that they make decisions on. And of course, the ZBA, nobody knows what they're going to say every time they open their mouths. So it's kind of, I didn't mean that poorly. It's just that they make a decision.
Right, there's no standards.
Right, that's why there is a ZBA. So I just think that it would be really hard to make a hard and fast rule to govern things when that would abolish the ZBA. And because that's what they're there for, to change what went before, to make it easy for someone to do something that they couldn't have done. And I don't really know what all the rules are with the building department. I've just heard when I was on the planning board, and I used to do work in and out of the planning board, out of the building department, because I worked in my husband's office. But they do have an amount of discretion. And I mean, I'm not saying not to try to make it a little bit easier for them. It's just there doesn't seem to be a way of locking them into something, especially not the ZBA. I don't see how you can do that.
With the building inspector, right, and this is specifically to the building inspector, there could be something that's written and that's codified that says something like the building inspector must write a determination as to why he made this decision and present it to the village board.
Well,
or something like that.
Idea.
I don't know if that's the amendment we're considering.
I don't know where it can take us.
Right.
But I know there's an issue. It's not a one-off. It's happened before with former building inspectors. And what I would think would be in the interest of the community is that we prevent the building inspector by putting themselves into a possible perceived determination, which is putting themselves in a determination perceived to be a capricious or arbitrary, so that we can help them. It's the idea is to help them to make a process. Now, I don't know if it entails amending the village code to be more precise, or whether buttoning up policies and procedures to help them out, and make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, because our role is to the Board of Trustees to make a recommendation. I think it'd be interesting to look into and understand more what other communities have done. Reportedly, they handle this better than we do. I'm not sure why or if that's true, but I'd love to spend some time to help out the building inspector so that he or she in the future have more of a checks and balances that are good for them, that they are, we don't have this perception problem and the ZBA issues and so on.
I suggest that you have the building inspector participate
Absolutely.
in this decision
Number one.
making, because they're on the ground and they see the reality of things that sometimes the code does not see. So we really should be involved.
For start, yes, and even certainly for me to begin to understand some of the issues and what they might like, attend specifically to speak to the current building inspector to see what he might see things that could be improved to help out in these situations.
So maybe that's a next step, maybe not the next step, but having Tin, he's ready?
Yes, I'm not sure what his name is, but he's here.
Okay, well, we do have I don't want to keep the board here, excuse me, the commission here longer than we need to be.
Midnight?
Yeah. So I'll just finish this one thought. Perhaps having Tim come to one of our meetings and discuss some of his concerns with the code is not a bad idea. And I don't know if that's for the next meeting. We'll speak with Mark, and perhaps, again, we'll discuss it in the work session. Alrighty, so who do we have with us?
You have this gentleman right here. I don't know his name. He didn't change it.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Okay.
You need to turn your, yeah, there you go.
Is that better?
That's better. A little bit.
Oh gosh. How's that?
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Charlie McGuckin with Rue Environmental. We did the dredge material sampling in Old Town Pond. And what we found is that there's about 25,000 yards of sediment in the pond, varying from 0 to about 4 feet deep, 4 feet thick, and also about 4 feet underwater at its max. So you have a layer of sediment up to 4 feet thick and up to 4 feet deep. Sediment we tested from a few locations. The sediment samples we took did not show environmental contamination. That was surprising, actually. I thought there would be some level of impacts just from street runoff, but at least in the 2 samples we collected, it was not impacted, which is good news. But more data would be necessary. We also took samples for nitrogen and phosphorus, and we found excessive nitrogen and phosphorus in the sediments. We compared that to the underlying sand material, which was much lower. So for example, the total nitrogen levels were 5 or 6 times higher in the sediment compared to the underlying sand. So it verified that the sediments are contributing nitrogen and phosphorus to the pond, contributing to the high algal bloom activity in the pond. We will be, we've already spoken with the New York State DEC about the steps to get a wetland dredging permit. They've asked us to follow up and speak with several other people in the agency. We've spoken with the wetlands folks so far. We've also spoken with the permit group, and they've also asked us to talk to solid waste. We still need to talk to solid waste. They will require additional information. They will require a licensed site survey. They will require a wetlands vegetation survey. And then they're also interested in knowing more about possible outlets for the dredge material. In other words, where they can go. So all of those steps will be required to be able to get a wetland dredging permit, which we are in the process of following up on, but we will need the village support in evaluating potential outlets for the material, whether it's either impacted or non-impacted. We believe, especially with a sediment dewatering system such as Peter Campbell had described, that we will be generating a good percentage, maybe 40 or 50% will be nice clean sand that can be reused for some local purpose. So that will be critical to the dredging plan and DEC approval. So that's a quick overview of what we've done and what we know. It is a lot of material, 25,000 cubic yards. It's an 8-acre pond, so it is a lot to manage. It's going to be multiple millions of dollars to be able to manage this material.
Has he reached out to the town trustees, being that I think they have jurisdiction?
Have you reached out to the town trustees, being they have jurisdiction?
We have a hearing with the town on October 12th.
Does anyone have any questions for Sean?
That was one of the questions I was going to ask, because the town trustees control those bodies of water.
Yes, they
We
do.
can't touch them unless they give us permission.
They will never let us forget.
But, sorry,
Yeah, so we do have that lined up. We're actually supposed to be talking to them about the grant money for water treatment at the pond. But this sort of ties together with that. But if we can't talk in detail about that on the 12th, then we'll just try to set up a follow-up with them.
So is Sean going to be, speaking of grants, are they going to pursue the WQIPP?
Are you going to pursue a WQIPP?
Yes.
Through the CPF?
Yeah, well, we submitted the application several months ago.
Okay.
That's the Water Quality Improvement Protection Plan, CPF, as you're probably all aware, 20% was be allocated for water quality. So we participate in that and can receive funds to maintain some of our.
If this works out in Old Town, the town trustees got a problem with Mill Pond and Watermill, but also does algae. So if it works out for them, you will probably have another.
They're killing carpet mill pond as we speak in hopes of dealing with their.
He said if this works out, you're going to have other waterways to help with.
So if anyone has any questions,
Okay.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. We're on the list of I don't know, about 7 different projects that they're considering. So it's encouraging that we're on the list. Certainly.
Thank you. Anything else, sir? Thanks, Sean.
Thank you for your patience. Sorry about the problems getting on.
We're good.
So just to recap, I am going to follow up with Mark regarding that list. Michael Anderson is going to maybe take some steps with the infrastructure. Bill's going to take a step with this building department code amendment possibly. And I'm going to reach out to Mark and see if we have a sit down with the mayor and see if we can get Tin Joe is his.
I don't know his last name.
His last name? Okay, well, the building inspector to perhaps speak with us at a subsequent meeting. Does anyone have any other comments or suggestions? Or?
Well, you and I may need to sit down with him before he comes to the public meeting.
Absolutely.
Make sure we don't trip over anything.
Right, no. Well, it could also be less focused on that, but more focused on...
More general.
Yeah, what as the building inspector, what are you noticing? What trends are you seeing? Where should we be focusing? And we can take that angle, but I'm open to either. Summer, do you have any questions, being this is your first planning commission meeting? Congratulations, you survived.
Thanks. Currently, no. But is the what they were talking about, the dredging, would that be, are they going to talk about it again? Like,
yes, we'll probably be discussing that.
Yeah,
forever.
That seems like it's going to
In
be a
some
long
capacity.
process. Yeah.
Well, a lot of our water bodies are contaminated, and dredging is a tool that we use
Yeah.
to combat that. So they will be here again, I assume, but I don't know when.
Okay.
But please relay what you're learning here to the high school, and make sure you inform those students. October 27th, they are residents here. They live here.
Yes.
Their families live here, and they have a say. So that public meeting for the master plan, if you're unfamiliar with master plans, just briefly think of them as the constitution for a municipality. Okay. It guides their actions. So if their voice is missed, it's a loss of opportunity.
Yeah. And then they're going to release like the Zoom information later, obviously.
Yes, it sounds like they're going to do some kind of PR next week.
Okay.
And we'll all probably be informed. So is there a process to adjourning that I'm unaware of? There is.
Somebody has to move to adjourn, everybody has to agree.
Okay, so I will move to adjourn. Does any?
second it.
Thank
I would
you.
like to stay here the whole night.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.